Can you change my name again? Thank you. I tried.
Well, I guess we're just waiting for Paige and Mindy and Jennifer and Casey.
We're just waiting for half of us.
Hey, Missy.
Hello. Did you guys get my email from Spalding?
Who now? Paige. Oh, Paige, Casey, and Jennifer. Okay. Are we still waiting? They haven't popped in the waiting room? Still waiting? Okay. I texted a reminder. Maybe they'll hop in.
Mindy and Missy, did you by chance get my email about the yearbook letter to send home with your students?
When did you send it?
Over the weekend.
Let me look real quick.
It's from my Yahoo account, not my school one.
Okay. I'll check real quick.
I did get it and I have not sent it out yet. I will do that when we're done.
Okay, thank you. I just need to try to get those responses back from the students just as quickly as possible so I can put it together in the yearbook. It might have been Friday that I sent it as I'm thinking about it.
I did get it.
Okay.
They're coming.
Sorry, I had 5:45 on my calendar. My bad.
That's only our regular meetings. Special meetings are early to throw you off.
Well, because I have nothing else going on and my calendar's not full and overflowing, so I have no excuse.
Last week I was on at 5 o'clock. I don't know where I got 5 o'clock.
You just want it to be done. Okay, looks like we're all here now. Let's call to order at 5:38. Does anyone have anything they want to revise or prioritize on the agenda? Seeing none, the agenda is approved as written. And does anyone have any public input? No? Okay. On to old business, 7th and 8th grade expansion. I'm not sure where we want to start.
What are the implications of the Deanne's message?
Basically that we are not on the agenda for next Tuesday. I mean, tomorrow
This Tuesday, yeah.
school board meeting. So we'll be on the next one, which is the 16th, or we will hopefully be on the next one, which is the 16th. And then that would make the second one the 30th. Do they meet every other Tuesday or only 2 Tuesdays?
I believe it's every other Tuesday.
Okay, so then the 30th. But if it makes those agendas and if they approve it, then that puts us like 2 weeks past the 90 days for it to go to the state. And I don't know how tight they are on that deadline.
Daryl's been checking with the state school board secretary, and there isn't there was a considerably large turnover in the state school board members. So I think he mentioned they're leaning more toward allowing school boards to have local control and not being so nitpicky about things. So he's kind of hopeful that they'll still look at that in the June, for their June meeting. I
Kind
believe
of
it was
like-
June 9th and 10th. Was that
I think
the
that's when-
days?
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's hoping they won't be so like it's not 5 days, it's still 80 days or whatever.
Yeah. But the implications for us is we will probably by then have a new charter school supervisor for the district because Daryl is retiring. So I believe his last day is in May. And I'm pretty sure whoever will replace him will kind of have a list of things that he's been working on. So hopefully it'll be kind of a smooth transition. And it won't mean any hiccups for us.
If we are anticipating, depending on the outcome of our meeting tonight, that we would be on the agenda next week, that's also at the same time as or on the 16th, that's the same time as our APB meeting. So is that something that you've already thought about and we'll discuss later?
Yeah, if we make it, we'll just have to reschedule our meeting, I think.
We could, or one of our board members or I could sort of tag team and maybe be sitting at the school board meeting waiting for them to get to our point in the agenda. Or we can move our meeting.
Or we could just, if we move it, if Thursday would work that same week for everyone. But I don't want to say, yes, let's move it right now if we don't know if we're going to make the agenda. But keep
Yeah.
in mind, we might, I guess, have to reschedule.
When will we know for which agenda we would be on? Like, is it the day of? Do they tell us a certain time in advance? Do we know?
I'm going to venture to guess that sometime this week, Daryl will let Vanessa and I know where our board memo stands as far as if Dr. Bishop and the cabinet feel comfortable pushing it up to the school board, or if they're going to return it to us for revisions or modifications or just flat out.
Questions, more work.
Yes.
So basically, I would say for the decision we're trying to make tonight, we either want a 7th and 8th grade expansion or we don't. And if we want it next fall, then we know that there's a possibility that whether we want it next fall or not, it might not happen until the next fall. Is that correct? Okay.
So what did you guys talk about at your meeting?
Let's see. So I sent out kind of a thing, updated what we talked about. So the committee recommendation for the APB was the consensus was to start 7th and 8th expansion with the first class of 7th graders the beginning fall of 2021, with the curriculum being the language arts that was attached in last week's email. And then math would be Saxon 7th level course 3, 8th level algebra, and anyone leveling above that, geometry. Social studies, core knowledge is publishing a 7th and 8th grade. So once that is published, that would be what we recommend using. And until then, dividing the 5th and 6th grade books between the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th was one option. And then the science recommendation was to either use the district or find another. And then towards the end of our meeting, Paige found one called Fry Scientific, and that looked intriguing. So Deanne has ordered us a sample of a teacher guide in one of their textbooks, or has reached out to their
Requested.
salespeople. Yeah, requested a sample. And then I did, in the email I sent, linked to kind of the overview of their curriculum, and then another link to their full life science book. And that curriculum in the life science also has a section on the human body that might count as health, so wouldn't need a separate class or separate curriculum for that. And then recommendation was to do a foreign language, but not pick which one yet, but have the choices of French, Spanish, or German that we want to decide on one from, since they both would feed into Eagle River or Chugiak high schools. And then electives would be quarterly and dependent on teacher preference or comfort teaching. For facilities, the recommendation starting, if we are able to get approved to start fall 2021, would be to have 7th grade in the technology classroom. And then technology would be taught in the grade level classroom just for that year. And fall 2022, we would be able to have completed expansion in our current space. And then the recommendation for staffing was a full-time 7th grade teacher, a full-time 8th grade teacher, and to consider hiring both at the same time so that they can team teach for the first year, to give them a year to adjust to our school, new curriculum, get any needed training done, and make pacing guides for the curriculum. And then at least a part-time TA beginning fall 2022. And I sent a sample, another sample schedule. We didn't solidify one, but have some options that are available and might need some playing with, and would kind of depend on what we may find for staffing, but that's largely what we came up with. And then also Deanne reached out to the Greening principal, and they are not reopening with a 6th grade. A 6th grade has been discussed, but does not have a timeline as to when they would do that. Did I get everything?
So you ready for some questions?
Okay. Sure.
Oh, one more thing. You had asked about the plans last time, if the landlord had seen those. Unless you know differently, my mom said he had those done.
Okay. I didn't know who had done
Okay.
them or
Yeah,
where they
she said
come
he
from.
had those done for them.
Okay, awesome. So one of my questions is, we've talked about how middle school teachers have to have the extra certification to teach their subjects. What about electives? Teaching the elective subjects.
So, music, art, and PE need to be highly qualified or certified in those areas. When we're talking about home economics, financial planning, debate, there are no certification areas for that. So at the schedule that I built, the idea behind that was that, have you had a chance to look at that schedule?
A little bit. I'm still trying to process it all.
Would you like me to put it up on the screen so I can kind of talk or walk you through why it was built that way?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see if I can find it. That would be here. Oops. Okay. So if we take a look at the schedule, what I'd like you to look at is, and part of the reason for my recommendation to start, when we do start with a 7th and 8th grade teacher fully employed, is that if we just do a 7th grade teacher, the one on the far left, you would be looking at trying to find basically a albino unicorn. You'd have to find a teacher certified or has passed the praxis for middle school language arts, middle school social studies, middle school math, middle school science, and a foreign language, NPE. So that teacher would more than likely have to teach all of those 6 sections. We would be able to offer them some sort of break if our PE teacher would pick up the PE sections a couple of times a week, but it's going to be really hard to do. So I built this schedule, which includes 7th and 8th grade, but knowing that we would only have 7th grade for the first year. This schedule would allow us to try to find 2 individuals, one with a math science specialty area and one with an English language arts social studies specialty area. Each of them would also be required to teach an elective, or hopefully one of them has a foreign language specialty. And then we could have either our technology teacher, our PE teacher, our art teacher, or our music teacher teach 2 days a week, 7th and 8th grade, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, to give our 7th and 8th grade teachers prep time. Because we still have to build prep time into their school day. Instead of finding 2 unicorns, we'd try to find, or 2 albino unicorns, we'd just find 2 unicorns. That being said, we could still, try to find people in their specialty areas and fill holes with part-time teachers, which would be a little bit hard to find. Also, the benefit of having a 7th and 8th grade teacher on staff for the first year is that we do not have curriculum pacing guides developed. They'd also have to spend time learning Spalding and mastering Saxon. So if we utilize both of them and not have a TA for the first year, that would give them some time while their colleague is doing the math or their social studies to actually be able to put together their pacing guides and master their curriculum so that when we bring the 8th grade on, we have a pretty solid foundation for curriculum, pacing guide, and experience teaching in our program.
I had a question that went along with that. Is it okay to ask at this time?
Sure.
So along with the pacing guides, what about the standards, developing the standards, developing the assessments? What is the reporting going to look like?
None of that has been built yet. So, it's going to be a long haul between now and the fall
I
to
feel
try to
like,
get that done.
but I feel like a lot of the 7th grade has already been built by me. There are 7th grade language arts and math standards. There are 7th grade assessments already done. It would just be developing social studies and science.
Now I have a question about the schedule because this looks a little different than the last one I saw. Because it says foreign language / art.
Oh,
Is
yeah, that's where I talked about, we do have to have the PE, and Mrs. Crowther
Right.
actually said that she's willing to go higher. She doesn't want to be full-time, but 0.5 would be okay. And then either it would be, we could do our art or music or technology kind of in there to give the teachers their 4 hours of prep time during the week. So it doesn't have to be art. It could be, something else.
So you're just saying if we find the unicorn that teaches English and language arts and social studies, but also can teach whatever foreign language we have, they would teach that. Because I know at one point we were
Right.
talking about bringing someone in part-time or something from another school. Okay. All right. I'm with you.
Yeah. We could try to find a teacher from another school that wants to come to just teach 2 sections of a foreign language. And I did talk with Brandon Locke, who's the director of world languages. Actually, he's, I believe, the director for all of curriculum, but he's maintained kind of control over world languages because it's his favorite. He said it's really hard to find anybody to teach 1 or 2 sections. Most people want to be full-time, and they don't want to be driving to different schools in the middle of the day to actually do that. And part of the reason why our electives are at the times that they are is so that it would give Mrs. Crowther, who's teaching PE, a 30-minute lunch break. And then she'd be spending the afternoon teaching the elementary PE sections that she's already doing. And the same if we utilized our art teacher or our music teacher. Our music teacher cannot teach a 0.5. She has to be 0.49 or below. Otherwise, she loses her retirement benefits. She would be more than willing to do an after-school program, an orchestra after-school program.
I'm on the call.
So just to clarify that, because you were saying that PE would only be like 2 or 3 days in the morning, and then the other time would be the other elective, but would because in the afternoon when, say, Mrs. Crowther is teaching the rest, she still has her planning period built in then. So would she still need that in the morning if she's still using it in the afternoon?
Mrs. Crowther isn't getting a prep time in the morning. She would need that prep time during the day. She's just going to be teaching 2 extra sections for us in the morning. And then the two sections in the afternoon. But the specials PE or the elective PE would only be on Tuesday and Thursday. So the foreign language or the other elective would be on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. That still protects our specials teachers have Fridays off. So I was building a schedule to try to make it more appealing for them to want to take on the extra sections.
I guess I'm not understanding. So she would be doing like 7th on Tuesday, Thursday, and 8th on Monday, Wednesday for PE. And then
No.
regular, I just don't see PE in the afternoon at all. So that's why I'm a little confused.
Okay. The PE is not in the afternoon on the 7th and 8th grade schedule because she's teaching PE in the elementary section.
Yes.
Right. The Tuesday and Thursday prep, she is providing the prep time for the 7th and 8th grade teachers. Just like they provide the prep time for our K through 6 teachers during the week.
But her prep time would be during the whatever random day it is that she doesn't have in the afternoon a PE.
Yes.
Okay, that's where I was getting confused.
Would we be doing the same thing with the foreign language, doing that only 3 days a week? Or I was just wondering if that's acceptable for doing like a full year and a full year. Does that matter?
So that's something that I'd have to talk with Brandon about to make sure that our scope and sequence covers the same thing that, say, the Spanish immersion program covers in their semester schedule.
And then the electives that are on here, those are just placeholders depending on whatever teachers decided they wanted to teach.
These are classes that are already in the middle school program of studies. So they do have a course description and an academic plan for them already, but our teachers could teach something different. The caveat was, and I shared this with the committee, is that if we do want to teach something that is not currently in the district's program of studies, we would have to go through an approval process for that.
And then I'm guessing that we don't have a proposed budget reflecting what it would be if we asked some of like Mrs. Crowther to go up to a 0.5, because then are we paying benefits at that point? I don't remember what that cutoff is that we would start doing that.
That's a really good question. And I have, let me see if I can find it. I spent some time today reworking a budget. And it is not completely finished yet. So this budget contains this budget contains 2 certified teachers, which are right here. I took out the proposed TAs for next year, since we technically would have 2 teachers teaching 1 grade level. The committee didn't think we needed to have a TA in there also. So this budget does not account for any additional time to our specials teachers, the two of them that we would be looking for to go to a 0.5. Once they go to a 0.5, we do have to do retirement benefits for them. They switch from Social Security to the TERS retirement system. So with not knowing what that looks like for those two, because I haven't been able to work with OMB on what that would look like, because that also depends on how many years of service they have in the system. I believe the previous budget I sent you said that we were looking at 197,500 or so that we could throw into the unallocated reserve. Switching from one teacher and one TA and going to two teachers, no TA, it took us down to an extra only having $107,683. So there is room to add those retirement benefits on there for our specials teachers or the teachers to cover the electives. And any curriculum, and again, supplies or whatever we would need, furniture, things like that.
So in the history of Eagle Academy, we have had a hard time keeping some of our special teachers. Would we anticipate that if, say, Mrs. Crowther did decide that she wanted to go ahead and do more and we were going to have her at a 0.5, and I don't know if you talked to Mrs. Murphy if she was wanting to do that too, would that make it then easier to find if they decided that they were no longer interested in teaching at Eagle Academy?
Mrs. Murphy has already indicated that she will more than likely retire at the end of the school year. She has been working with a couple of her colleagues in the art department and believes that she has somebody who is interested in her position, just so that she can kind of get her foot in the door with the school. Eventually that person would like to be a full-time, I believe, but had already indicated she would be interested at 0.3. I think that a 0.5 would be even more appealing. But that being said, we're either looking for a young teacher with a family that wants to be part-time, or someone who wants full-time because they want the benefits.
And so if we didn't have our unicorn teacher who also taught a foreign language, then we would also be looking for somebody else that would then go into our budget as well then, right?
Correct.
But that would most likely, assuming it was just the foreign language, that would be less than a 0.5.
Right, it would only be 2 sections a day, which I think is going to be either 0.2 or 0.3, something like that.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
So again, there's, two ways to kind of go about this. You can build your schedule around the staff that you already have, or you can build your schedule and hope that we can attract the staff that we need.
So off of that is what my question was, is that one of the big parts of our school is leveling. And I think we kind of talked a little bit about leveling up, that the students would finish with their language arts or math and then just go back to their regular class and do quiet seat work or whatever. But what about those students that need to level down, especially coming into Eagle Academy, not having the Saxon and Spalding foundation, that what that challenge would be, and if there would be more leveling down, and would that be harder to have those students level down and missing part of their level down language arts and math?
So my thoughts on that, and anybody else that was at this committee meeting can talk if they have a different opinion, but having 2 teachers next year for 7th and 8th and having them team teach can allow for all of the 7th graders to remain together. If there was a need for leveling down, they would be team teaching to sort of help offset and support the students that need that extra help to bring them up to the 7th level, so that moving on into 8th wouldn't be an issue. And then for 8th graders and 7th graders, because it's alternating in the schedule, if it's really necessary to level down, then we could. But the idea would be, if we can keep them in from 7th up to 8th, then they should, with that first year getting it solidified, should be able to carry up and be not having to level down, if that makes sense.
Actually, I thought the schedule that Deanne did for 7th grade lined up our language arts and math for the most part, so that leveling can happen for those.
Well, for
You
the
can-
7th graders, it does to level down. Math was the only one that was not going to work, because our K6 math time is at 10:30 when they're doing their foreign language.
Right. So just a 7th grade with one teacher, you can do that. But then, so, I mean, you have your conundrum. I mean, do you cut your time for your social studies, your science, and your electives to keep your math and your English language arts the same as the elementary program? Or do you make it like a middle school program and have those class switches in the 50 to 55-minute class period time? It's hard to do both with the way that our schedule is, and then to be able to offer those electives. Because you don't, and then where are we going to find our prep time for our teachers? And the schedule actually doesn't really work, because Mrs. Crowther can't teach PE to the 7th and 8th graders in the afternoon. So we could switch the PE to the morning, but then that doesn't give her a 30-minute duty-free lunch period between when she finishes teaching PE in the morning and when she starts teaching PE in the afternoon to the. elementary kiddos. And so that's what necessitated a change in the schedule. And I created something that looks more like a traditional middle school, intermediate school schedule than a more advanced elementary program. So this is the schedule that Paige built earlier. So again, do we build a schedule around the staffing that we have and that we think we can get, or do we just build the schedule and let me have fun trying to find the teachers to fill it?
If you build it, they will come. Is that how it goes? In baseball,
My concern would be that I don't feel like we can get too granular about this to where it then holds up the ultimate decision. Does that make sense? I mean, you just have to use a best case scenario and a reasonable. So I think I would go back to Jennifer's point that it's been difficult to hold on to specialist teachers. So I think my question is not so much, do we sort out the 30-minute covered lunch, but do we have a, I don't know, 70% feasibility of finding the staff necessary to accomplish the end game? I mean, I just don't know how we would say with total assurance, okay, this schedule and this schedule is going to work. And I mean, that's just my thought.
Well, what I'm trying to do.
Sorry. I was just going to say that's what I think too. Like we can have this is how we kind of want it to work, but it couldn't be massaged. We can be flexible. Can the budget cover it? Do we have curriculum we want to teach? Do we want it? Not necessarily, what time should lunch be today?
I totally get it. I'm just trying to let you know that if we don't have a duty-free lunch, I'm looking now for an extra PE teacher who wants to teach just one section of PE a day. And Anna, in addition to Anna, was teaching the 3 sections of elementary PE.
and I understand all that, but I think part of it has to be the whole remaining true to the charter and the whole point about why we do what we do is that we have the language arts and the math for that leveling purpose so that the students can be where they're supposed to go. So for me, it's not necessarily the rest of it. It's the language arts and the math and making sure that those students can be in the right classroom where they need to be. I think students that are leveling up are not going to have as much of a difficult time if they miss something. But those that level down and they're missing 30 minutes of their language arts or their math class because they're in the middle school class and they're not able to get all that is being taught, that's where I'm worried about. And I could be wrong because I'm not the teacher and I don't see necessarily what happens during those time periods. But that's my concern with the transitioning from elementary to middle school.
I don't have anything helpful there either. My personal preference is to somehow still line it up so they can level for those two, but
Well,
it looks tricky.
what you're going to end up having to do is find an 8th grade teacher who can teach math and language arts, and a 7th grade teacher that's going to teach math and language arts, to put them all at the same time so that they can level. Right. In addition to, a science and a social studies. So, whatever the board's preferences, I can go to staffing and we can advertise all we want, and we could get really lucky. We could find 2 teachers that are highly qualified and have endorsements in at least 3 of the 4 core areas. And also willing to teach. I mean, there's a reason why middle school teachers and high school teachers only have one specialty, because they're teaching multiple different subjects. They don't want to teach multiple different subjects a day like elementary teachers do, because the content gets a little bit more in-depth. And I mean, I don't want to say more rigorous, but just a little bit more complicated. So we'll do our best to figure out the scheduling and the staffing. But if you want to make it happen, I am only 50% confident that I can make a schedule work by this fall, especially if I can't really staff till June.
Okay, and that's the number I was kind of wondering about. Okay, so you're at a 50.
If 50 on a short timeline, but possibly more on a longer timeline.
If they're out there, we can put our feelers out and announce from the top of Baldy or something, and see who we can get convinced to come over.
Well, and on top of that 50, we also have training to deal with too.
And then is that something else if we're talking about doing 7th and 8th or having the 2 teachers, would we also be asking them to become Spalding certified teachers in their first year of learning it to become a Spalding certified school?
We wouldn't, Missy, I don't know what you're thinking, but I'm guessing that one of them is going to have to be certified.
It's not about certification. It's about just having the courses, because you think when Eagle Academy started, all of us teachers were in the first course. We were thrown into it 2 weeks before school started, and we taught it, and that's how we learned it. So as long as they have some background in it and they've taken a course, and then they can take the next course the next year, the next summer.
I guess I was asking in the frame of, then they would also be having to fine tune their standards, the assessments, the reports, the pacing guide, and Spalding certified, all of that in their first year. Is there a time?
Which was that was the benefit though of hiring a 7th and an 8th grade teacher for just the first year of just 7th grade teachers, because it allowed them a little more time to work on that together. Because like if we were following that schedule in the middle, if one of them's teaching, you'd only look at the 7th grade column. So if we hired the teacher that does English and social studies and the teacher that does math and science, while the English teacher is teaching English, then the teacher that teaches math is kind of there being the TA, but also they're kind of prepping and listening and working on these standards and working on different things like that so that they can continue to collaborate with each other when they get to their prep time together.
So once we start the Spalding certification process, do we have a timeline that has to be done during?
Are you talking about accreditation that we're starting next fall?
Yeah.
I mean, with 7th and 8th, if we start 7th, I am sure that they will be perfectly fine with our 4th, 5th, and 6th representative. But there will be, a time frame within 2 years if you have a new section.
Okay. That's
Okay.
what I was wondering.
But I don't believe the first year we will have to count that. I mean, we're not even going to be accredited until probably mid next year. So we'll have a little more time.
So I don't know if you want to throw thoughts out if we're at that point. I'm feeling that there's a lot going on next year, especially not 100% even knowing what COVID is going to do to us next year. And ideally, we're all hoping that all students will be back all the time, but we still don't even know that, which would throw more wrenches into the works of trying to figure out a new schedule, new grade, new staff. I would be okay with pushing it out one more year to solidify more, get more planning, work on those details, and then trying to add it for fall of 2022. That's kind of where I am at.
Deanne, I have a question for you on that too. So, if we take this to the board to be pushed through for fall of 2021, and Vanessa, you may know this by talking to your mom too, or you may have input on it. But it took them 3 years to develop the standards to get everything in line. Are we at that point? And I guess I'm talking to the committee too. Do you feel like our standards are exactly what they're going to want to see? Or are they just kind of, thrown together quickly? Do you feel like the district would say that it is self-explanatory? Or do you feel like, they're going to be looking for something, a little bit more put together?
I
Vanessa?
don't know from past. I know from past stuff but those were different board members and a different superintendent who did not want our school to start. So they gave as much pushback and go do this, go do this, go do this as they possibly could. And I think Deanne has mentioned before, but she can talk to you on what they would think kind of just depends on who's looking at it, what else they have going on, what they've made other charter schools do since then is not what we had to do in the beginning.
When you're referring to standards, what are you referring to?
Well, just the standards that were sent out last week, they're just not very detailed. And I didn't know if the district, because I know, like we have done from the beginning, those are a work in progress. And so, are they going to be looking for more detailed standards?
Well, what we sent out last week was an academic plan that just gives you kind of a snapshot of what will be covered all year. But
Is that sufficient enough for what the district is going to be looking for, is I guess what I'm saying with that, Mindy?
oh, well, I don't know about that part, but I can say that the 6th grade and the 7th grade language arts standards are exactly the same. And I would anticipate that 8th grade would have the same standards. Math would be different, but social studies and science is life science, physical science, earth science, and social studies is historical content and geography. I mean, those are the standards on the report card. So developing a report card for them will not be difficult at all. I don't think the pacing guide will be very difficult, especially if they can follow what I've done in 7th grade, which is pretty much what the year to, or the academic plan is. So I wasn't there for that part of the meeting where they talked about hiring a 7th and an 8th grade teacher for next year. And I think there'll just be some people sitting around idle, not doing a whole lot, because it won't take very much to put the standards and the report card together. And Spalding or Saxon assessments are already made. Social studies and science assessments already made. It would just be making some language arts assessments.
But social studies and science aren't made for 7th level, right? I mean, because you just have your 6th level made for
Well,
science and social studies.
They are in the sense if they're part of the curriculum that we're going to be using. Because those chapter tests, those unit tests come with the curriculum. I mean, that's what we're using.
Is that not what you're using for 6th grade though? Would it be the same tests, I guess is what I'm saying?
I guess I'm under the understanding that science is going to be a whole different curriculum, not to water down 5th and 6th.
Oh, okay. You're saying if that is chosen.
Yes. And then 7th grade, even though we're sharing the textbook, we're not covering the same topics.
Where are the standards though? I mean, wouldn't the board have to take a look at that and go through an adoption process for the standards? And then with the new curriculum, those teachers are going to have to create a pacing guide to make sure that the text is going to cover things and in what order are they going to cover it and all of those sorts of things. It's not going to be an easy task for somebody who's new to a program trying to develop all of that. I mean, we don't have it done for them. If it was done for them, that would be a little bit different. And then you're not talking about just one specialty area. So, you know, everything's going to be new for them. If we try to continue with our leveling, the language arts will be new to both of them unless we get somebody with, or both of them with Spalding backgrounds. The math will be something, I mean, basically you're looking for elementary teachers who have had to pass the praxis in every single one of the middle school or high school content areas. And it's going to be a fun year to put together all of those sorts of things for them. So they're not going to be sitting down twiddling their thumbs.
And maybe that's something we can ask too, like if we do have 2 teachers here and they're not, we would like for them to take the praxis in one of the other subject areas, but that they don't have, maybe that could be something that we're asking for them to work on during the year if we feel like we're getting to the point that they are twiddling their thumbs. I don't think they would be, but that could be something we could also ask as well.
Well, is the board then paying for the praxis for those teachers?
What kind of price tag is on that? I have no frame of reference.
They're like $250, $300.
Well, I would say yes if we're asking them to, but
Yeah.
I don't think that needs to be part of what we're
Right.
getting into the nitty gritty.
Well, and also anything like that, that's just part of the investment. I mean, I just keep going back to that. This is not, oh, we're just adding a whatever. I mean, this is like true expansion. And when you expand, you invest. That would just be, you would just have to I mean, we'd have to come to that agreement that there is a certain level of cash that's going to have to be infused to make this work and to do it right. That's why I like the 7th and 8th grade idea that, I mean, it would be really ready to roll if you had 2 people already there investing, ready to go, backing each other up, as opposed to the incremental add over time.
I guess that's where I'm getting frustrated, because I feel like at one meeting I'm hearing, you know, as an educator that's certified K through 8, I could step in and do one of these jobs. And then at the next meeting, I'm hearing I have to pass a praxis test, when the praxis tests were done away with when NCLB went away.
I'm not, hopefully you didn't hear that from me, because being K through 8 elementary certified is not the same thing as teaching in the middle school. So, I mean, the district has always asked their middle school teachers, as far as I know, to be endorsed, certified, or have the praxis, or be able to prove that they have the content knowledge area. Now, you don't have to take the praxis too. You can actually have the college course equivalent of a minor in those areas.
So what is, like Mindy saying, K8, what did you say, K8 what?
I just K8. That's
So why do they have a K8 and you have to do the other thing? Also, just as a side, I was looking at the other charter schools that have a K8 and looking at their staff, and like Winterberry only has 1 grade 7 teacher. So did they get like a special pass for that? Can we get
I don't know what that person is teaching. I can't tell you what that person's job description is. I can tell you that the K8 is used a lot in rural Alaska. I mean, these are state designations for the certification. It's used in rural Alaska, where it's really hard to find teachers in those areas. So, you know, in talking with Peggy Rankin, who's the senior director for HR staffing, or talent management, as they call it now, they would not allow any current AEA teachers the luxury of that little kind of probationary period where you could actually teach it without being certified while you were working to pass the praxis test. They don't do that anymore for teachers who are currently AEA members. Somebody new to the state or new to the district, they might grant that luxury, as long as they actually have sort of some proof or evidence that they can be taking it, and they're just waiting to take the test or finish that class. So I'm sorry for your frustration, Mindy, but it's not an elementary program. It's moving into a 7th and 8th grade program. And so there's kind of that caveat.
Oh, I get that. I just feel like with all the Spalding classes I've taken, and I feel like I would qualify for that as well as the math. So I'll just have to look at it.
Yeah, just look into taking the test. And now some people think that just taking the test is super easy, so you can just go and do it, and, you know, voila.
I've already taken the math praxis for middle school, but as you said, it wouldn't cover it. So
Well, for pre-algebra, not for algebra though. Because algebra is considered a high school subject. So if you did the high school math test, you could teach the algebra.
So
which
does
is my
that mean that
understanding.
we'll have to have that a high school certified teacher for the math in case we have eighth that are leveling up?
If I go to the district and ask that, the answer will be yes. And that is why we also have every year principals have to certify all of the classes that their teachers are teaching, and they have to report that to the state based on what those teacher certifications are, and then the state sometimes sends warnings, or sometimes I don't know what they do to districts that have people teaching outside of their endorsement or certification area. It's not a federal requirement anymore, but it is a state expectation.
Do they teach in the middle school? Do they teach algebra? They do, don't they? So are those all high school certified teachers?
I have no idea. I can't.
Well, now we're just looking for an albino and rainbow spotted unicorn that can teach high school.
When you get into the secondary area, teachers who have high school certifications are allowed to teach in the middle school as long as it's their same subject area. But middle school teachers are not allowed to teach high school subjects unless they have that special content knowledge. And it's, kind of the same thing. They just ratchet up the amount of information or expertise somebody is supposed to have in any one of those areas. Like in high school, you don't get a general social studies certification. You have to take the praxis in US history. You have to take the praxis in psychology. You have to take the praxis in government. You have to take the praxis in geography. You can't just teach any subject because you have a social studies. And that's where it kind of comes into the middle school.
So for math, is it you take the algebra praxis, you take the geometry praxis, or is it you just take a high school math praxis?
Yep, and that goes all the way up to calculus.
Wow.
Well, I guess I'm still with Casey on that. It's an investment and we know what we would need to put together, but it's not impossible to put together. So I guess it's still kind of, do we want to do it or do we not want to do it?
My other question is, can you say, look, this is what we want to do, and then you run into some, roadblock, like a practice test involving calculus, which would be the roadblock for me. Can you just say, it's just not going to work out? I mean, because I know that's the other question we would have to decide. So what are the showstoppers? Say, okay, we move into this. Everybody starts doing a lot of work, really, other than me, because you guys are really doing a lot of work here around schedules and everything else. But what could we identify if we run into this roadblock? It's just not going to happen. And at what point do we, I don't, because the plan is good. I don't see the district necessarily being, this school has the credentials and the credibility to move forward with this plan, right? You have the great testing scores, you have incredibly happy families, you were back in the classroom without incident before anyone else. So I think the credibility is there for 7th and 8th grade. So the question is, and there is, considering how long this has been discussed, which has not been that long, there's a good solid amount of information on the table. So let's give it to the district and they go through theirs. Everyone starts working on it. I mean, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you just at least get permission to go forward? Unless you say, look, we cannot find this person who has these skills and we have to have them to teach the 7th grade English. It's just not going to happen.
So I think maybe the first question is going to be for the board, is this something that you want to pursue? And then second would be when you want to pursue it. I can't start staffing until we know that this is actually going to take place, because the district won't even let me advertise. I can start calling everybody in AppleTrack and seeing if anyone would be interested in potentially moving over to Eagle Academy to teach 7th and 8th grade, but I need to know what to tell them as far as what their job description would be and how many sections, or what their day would look like. Because I can tell you, Missy and Mindy and even Paige, if somebody was to offer you a position, you probably are going to want to know some specific details before you make your decision, especially if you're already currently employed at another school. So we're going to miss staffing because staffing starts in April. So by the time we start advertising this year, it will be after almost all teachers have their positions that they're going to be in for next year, except for ones that have wanted to transfer and just never found a place to transfer to.
Which is not going to be likely to be our albino rainbow spotted unicorn.
There'll be a unicorn, but
Not the one we're looking for, probably, with all of the requirements we need.
Well, then I guess, does anyone want to make a motion?
Well, I guess, I don't know. I'm still of the same mind that I don't think this fall would be the time to implement it. I think the next fall, and to hash out more of these details, put feelers out there, try to get the world hopefully a little bit more recovered, and then attack a little bit more specifically. But that's just me. I'm not opposed to the 7th, 8th. I just think waiting a year with the 7th, 8th targeted approach, I think that would be okay. So that's just me.
How does that affect the discussion with the board? I mean, would it still need to happen now, though? Wouldn't it? It would just have slightly different.
You mean with
Verbiage?
the school board?
Yeah, because I would think that you would still want to go to the school board.
Yeah, it
Either
would just
way.
lengthen our timeline a little bit.
Yeah. But you would still go to the
But
board
we
as
would
soon as
still want to make
possible.
like the December
Yeah.
meeting for the state meeting, which means we would need to
Right.
make the September school board meeting. So we can't put this off for a year.
Right. Okay, that's what I was thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
we still have to maintain the same pace.
And I think also, you know, because I am thinking along the lines of Jennifer, you know, I don't want to set somebody up for failure. You know, we wouldn't even be able to start the hiring process till June. And then there's a lot to learn between then and the time school starts. Whereas if you have more time, there can be committees set up to work on the standards or to work on, you know, a pacing guide, and then have someone come in with confidence. So that's my feeling.
If we can get on the December state school board and get that approved, then we can actually have been working with the district's IT department to have everything set for the lottery so that January 1st, when the lottery opens, we can have that seventh grade class in the lottery and start looking at really what the demand is and all of that kind of fun stuff. Then we can also start putting our feelers out for people. You know, like Missy said, if we hired in June, that means that that candidate is going to be spending June, July, and August trying to get ready for the fall. And then I'm sure most of us after this year are going to want to have a summer.
So do you, I guess, Deanne, do you recommend that we make a decision at this meeting? Do you recommend that we wait to make a decision?
I'd like you to make.
If we wanted it to be next fall, then we would have to make a decision today.
You mean this fall, this coming fall?
Yeah. If we want it to be the next fall, can we decide in a regular meeting? Can we give it a couple of months? I don't know what you think. But the school board, not the school board, the superintendent already has what we have. So we also don't want to wait too long on that and have it look like, hey, just kidding, we haven't even voted still.
Well, I think that you could certainly vote on whether or not you think you want to move forward, because that'll also give the committee time to get to work on all the specifics. You know, what are the standards going to look like for science and social studies? Put together specifically, and I'm sure Mindy can pull out seventh grade. A seventh grade English language arts and a Spalding and Saxon math program. And then we still need to shore up eighth grade. And that way the board, you know, as someone asked earlier, whether or not the district was going to be wanting more specifics, I would think that the question is more important for you folks as a board. Do you feel like we have enough of the details fleshed out to start in the fall? I mean, the quality that we're known for, you know, the school's reputation would be such that we'd want to have not just our ducks in a row, but they're all groomed and, you know, straightforward and all of that kind of stuff. So, you know, voting tonight to decide whether or not you want to do it, and then, you know, maybe the time frame could be something that you talk about at our March meeting.
So if you think how long it took us to pick our science curriculum, and we're back at the science curriculum, not having seen this suggested book. I think having the flexibility of, if the superintendent comes back and says we need this more, or it goes to the school board and they say they need this more, and we've already said no, we want it to start fall 2021, and then we're out of time because we can't get it ready. I think if we become more solidified in what we have, figure out those details, because even though this group doesn't necessarily have to come up with all the details, but the committee is working on all those details. Those details are what are going to go to the school board and the state board and say, yes, this is a viable program. Yes, this is going to work and we're going to be successful in it. As opposed to right now, we don't even know what science book we want because we're still exploring that. But I think we could be ready for the December meeting.
So my thoughts are, if we move it to be not the 21 school year, but the 2022 school year, that we don't stop the momentum that we have, because I feel like the sooner it gets approved by the school board, then the faster we can solidify the rest of the details, as well as advertising for a person, as well as just keeping on with the whole standard thing that we need to develop and whatnot. Because if we just say, oh, well, we have a few more months, then it just keeps going and we keep not doing it. And then the same for our families that are, reaching out to the committee and very excited about 7th grade next year and 8th grade the following year, or just 7th and 8th grade in general. If they see, if it's approved now for the following school year, then at least they'll see that we are moving forward and not pushing it off again and pushing it off again. So
No, I totally agree with that. Right. I mean, either way, it just has to maintain the same pace that it's on.
But maybe not 6 meetings in 10 days.
Well, there's that.
That's what I was going to say. Not a meeting every other day.
yes, of course,
Okay,
not a meeting every other day.
3 days, maybe you can have one a week, We'll give you spring break off.
Jeez.
I'm okay to make a motion if everybody's at that point.
Before you do that, let me clarify. If the motion is going to be that we don't do this until 2022, are you going to make this motion that we start 7th and 8th grade and assume building space next door? So incurring 2 teachers plus TAs plus building space in 2022. That's my next question. Because that was the other kind of benefit, if you will, of trying to start in 2021, because we wouldn't have to assume the extra budget hit for having to assume space. We could start the program with 2 teachers and sort of get it developed before having to assume extra building space.
I don't know what the budget ramifications are. I was thinking of doing it, hiring the 7th and 8th grade teacher, but starting a 7th grade class fall 2022, like we were talking about, and then the next year adding the 8th grade class. So it would just be pushing everything by a year. That's what I was thinking.
And how specific, Deanne, do we need to get in a motion? like, who said, maybe it was Jennifer or maybe it was Deanne, of do you, like, if you're just, if we're just approving the expansion of it, then that gives us the flexibility of either, or do we need to be really specific?
Well, maybe this motion could just be an approval to seek a charter revision for the expansion of Eagle Academy to a 7th and 8th grade program beginning in the year 2022, 23. Is that it? And then the plan that we put forth to the school board could be a phased in or an all in. But the more detail that you get flushed out as far as a schedule, standards, what your report card would look like, your pacing guides, the more confidence the district is going to have that this will actually be successful.
But that doesn't need to be in the motion.
No.
So if we just say the charter revision to add expansion for 7th and 8th grades beginning in 2022-23, that's up to us then whether we start it with 7th grade and then add 8th grade the next year, or add them both that same year, right? Because that wouldn't specify necessarily. We would still have the flexibility to choose either one.
You might want to have a plan for both because they might ask you. So what does that mean? Does that mean you're going to phase in the first year 7th grade and then the second year add the 8th grade, or are you going to add both of them at the same time?
But if we make this motion tonight at this meeting, would we have to know that by the next ASD board meeting on the 16th?
No, that'll be their first reading. And they, like I said earlier, sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they just look at you and say, okay.
And if the motion was made and if it was for fall 2022, could we also go back to Daryl and say, hey, can you actually put us on for like an April board meeting?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're not stuck to the March 16th if we push it out a year. Okay.
Okay, are you ready for a motion then?
Go for it.
I make a motion that we seek for a charter revision to add expansion for 7th and 8th grades beginning in 2022-23.
I will second that.
Can you read it one more time so I can write it down too?
I make a motion that we seek for a charter revision to add expansion for 7th and 8th grades beginning in 2022-23.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to seek for charter revision to add expansion for 7th and 8th grades beginning in 22-23, and was seconded. Does anyone have any discussion on that motion?
Would that just mean that we could go ahead and wait till the April board meeting to get more things put together and not feel so like rushed?
Yes.
Would that need to be a part of the motion, or just that's our understanding? Okay.
Just the understanding that we're not stuck at March 16th if we're like, well, let's wait.
I
Okay,
think this is just, the board is saying, we are for an expansion.
Yeah.
But we are for the expansion starting in fall of 2022. If it gets approved, I should say.
Does anyone? Oh,
Call
sorry.
vote.
Wait, what'd you say?
I was asking if we're ready for a roll call vote,
Oh.
or are we? I was just ready to write down yeses and noes. That's all.
Are we ready for a vote, or does anyone have any other discussion? No? Ready for vote? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right, roll call vote. Who's first on here? Missy.
Yes.
Okay. And, oh, we moved now. Mindy.
yes.
And Jennifer.
Yes.
And Paige.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And Casey.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So the motion passes. It's exciting. I'm excited. All right. Do we need anything else, Deanne?
So tomorrow, will you send Daryl a note saying that, or whatever the motion was, and then
Yeah.
have him put it on for the April meeting? That way, everybody can kind of have a spring break.
Yes. And then we can maybe have a couple more, maybe 2 or 3 more committee meetings before then too. So if they do the 30th, then their first April one would be the 13th that we would be aiming for. So
And then Vanessa, will you be contacting the committee for our next meeting date?
sure.
Okay,
Is
Are we-
there something that,
I just was gonna ask if we're gonna try and do it before spring break or after, or if there's something specific you would like me to work on over spring break? Because I'm gonna have more time to do it over spring break than I'm gonna have when school starts up, especially with testing.
Okay. What day are we on today? Oh my gosh, we're on March 1st today.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Well, we couldn't really call a meeting until Thursday. So I don't know. Do we want to try and do one? I don't know what more without the science curriculum and without the social studies one all the way published. I don't know what extra we would do, I guess. But
Okay.
I can email everything that we talked about and what the motion was, and then, send everyone, marinate over spring break on schedule or something
Okay.
like that.
That sounds good.
Okay.
You make sure you send me your teacher answers for the yearbook over spring break if you have before then.
My teacher answers.
Send you an email with ones from the teachers too.
All right, I'll get right on that.
What you sent us, can we just forward to our families?
The one that was for the students, yeah.
Okay.
For ones that don't want to print things off, then if you had the opportunity to print off, hand them to them, that's fine. Just because I know I'll get some paper, some electronic, whatever.
is there something specific the board would like as far as in our next meeting?
Massages.
to help in making the decision on whether or not we would move forward with just the 7th grade phased in first year and then 7, 8 second year, or an all in with the 7, 8th grade in 2022, 23. What would you need to be able to make that decision?
A crystal ball.
I've got a magic 8-ball. It's just as
Probably
good.
the biggest thing is probably just budget comparisons.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Do you have, was one of the budget options, did that include an 8th grade head count or not yet?
That budget was based on a 7th grade phase in and an 8th grade.
Okay.
But the difference would be also facilities. Do you want to move ahead for 2022, 23 with a facility for both 7th and 8th grade? Okay. So then
My
Vanessa-
assumption, oh, I guess, sorry. Yeah, I guess that would go into both decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you,
If we have the time, I think doing the space is preferable.
so working with Sean to make sure that by 2022, the fall of 2022, we have enough space for both 7th and 8th grade. Okay. Do you want me to look at what that's going to look like with him to continue with our space next year, a 1-year extension, and then to expand the next year to include what do you guys want me to negotiate a build out? Like, is that going to be totally his expense, or would we share a 50-50 expense for that? Or
Yeah, I'd say start asking what he'd be willing to do. I think he incurred all of the cost before, and I think he has said, I will not do that again.
okay.
I mean, he probably would if like the lease rate was right enough to make him whole in a short amount of time. But yeah, I'd say.
And I mean, we've been great tenants and we've paid him a lot of money. So, you know, we have a reputation that he may incur that cost. So it's worth a try is all I'm saying.
Okay. So to incur that cost, he's not going to want to do it for just another year extension after that.
Right.
So does anybody feel comfortable with a 3-year extension?
Is that something that we have to decide now, or should we wait for our meeting on the 16th?
Well, that'll just depend on how accurate do you want?
Engaging him to be.
Well, as far as a rate is concerned and what it's going to cost us, he'd have to do some research on his own to see how much a build up would be and amortize it over 3 years, and can he afford that in his budget?
I don't think that's something we have to vote on like right this second, but if we are all willing to consider a 3-year lease, then if she finds the budget and the rate that he would give us for a 3-year lease, and she can bring it to the meeting that we do vote for it on.
I'm good with that.
So
I don't see the ability to do this plus move to a new facility. I don't know. I think that'd be taking on quite a bit. And 3 years to me is like, 3 years.
Come on.
It's not that long, but I'm like, really, probably I wouldn't expand plus build a new school, but it's just me.
Or if we can fundraise $3 million a year over the next
There's
3
that.
years,
So true.
we could
Church
build our
building
own
committee right here. Church building
that's a
committee.
lot of eating at Panda Express. I'm just saying.
Popeyes.
We can throw a Texas Roadhouse in there.
I know. Oh my gosh. Ugh. That's like
Okey-doke.
2 trillion box tops, just if you need a quick math calculation too.
I'll have to be knocking on neighbors' doors. Could I scan your grocery receipt?
All right. Are
Hey,
Do we need
Go
anything-
ahead.
Do we need anything else? Because I have another meeting to go to down here.
I don't.
It's so
think-
funny. Me too. I'm like, it starts at 8.
I think
Thank
we're good,
you.
right? Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I moved to
Uh,
adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Me.
Okay, adjourned at 7:15.
My family will be shocked.
This could possibly be the shortest EACS APB meeting ever.
Night.
Night.